United States Senate Foreign Relations Committee will come to order. Today we're going to hear from three of President Trump's nominees, and ordinarily we have a couple of senators to do introductions, but one's here, one isn't, so I think we'll start with the opening statements and then we'll go to the introductions. So with that, I've got a few remarks. I'm going to yield to Senator Shaheen to give her remarks, then we'll have introductions, and we'll have comments from the nominees, and then we will open it up to questions. For those of you who are here in the audience, as usual, we welcome you. This is an open hearing. I notice we have a lot of family and other friends here. I would, as always, state that this hearing is a business of the United States of America that's important, needs to go on. Any type of interruptions, any attempt to communicate from the audience, verbally or otherwise, will be met with a removal and arrest and ban from the committee for a year. That's the way we keep order here, but we're welcome to have you. So with that, today America will hear from the President's nominees to be U.S. ambassadors to some of our most important allies. The threats we face from China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are too big for anyone to face alone. I hope our nominees would agree that we need mutually beneficial with our friends like Canada, Mexico, and Japan, and that they will act on day one to make this happen, and it's incredibly important. Our first nominee, Ambassador Pete Hoekstra, has served the people of Michigan in Congress for nearly 2 decades and is ambassador to the Netherlands in President Trump's first term. Now as ambassador to Canada, Ambassador Hoekstra, you will work with a country that is not just a neighbor, but a NATO treaty ally and major trade partner. I look forward to hearing about how you will urge our Canadian friends to increase their military spending, which they acknowledge publicly that they need to do. They need to modernize the North American Aerospace Defense Command to meet the real threats that both of our nations face. Canada must show meaningful change and fulfill its defense obligations. Canada's low contributions are not as helpful to the collective defense, the NATO's collective defense, as they can or they should be. Turning to Japan, Mr. Glass, you have an opportunity to further modernize the U.S.-Japanese alliance to ensure our countries are prepared to deter the long-term threats we face from China. President Trump's summit reaffirmed U.S. commitment to Japan's security, including through our nuclear umbrella. Our alliance is rock solid. To build on this foundation, we need to prioritize the important economic and security relationships the U.S. and Japan share with South Korea, the Philippines, and Taiwan. Japan is stepping up its defense capabilities. Its decision to develop counter-strike capabilities is a key example of this. But like all our allies, Japan must do more to bolster its defenses. I hope that working with the Japanese to do this will be a priority for you. You also have a chance to strengthen our trade and investment relationships with Japan. We have some trade friction with Japan in my home state, in Idaho, that's been ongoing for a long time. Its market remains closed to our fresh potatoes, and we are not seeing progress. I hope you'll work with me to resolve this once you're confirmed. Finally, I'm pleased to welcome back Ambassador Johnson, who has served the United States government for over 4 decades, most recently as the U.S. Ambassador to El Salvador. As Ambassador to Mexico, you'll face a unique set of challenges that are critical threats to U.S. national security. All of us are seriously concerned about the role of Mexican cartels in the manufacture and trafficking of lethal narcotics like fentanyl, and of course, in illegal immigration. These criminal activities pose unprecedented and direct threats to American families. Every state in America is truly a border state. President Trump's designation of cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, his enforcement of security at the border, and the vigorous enforcement of U.S. immigration laws to protect domestic security is to be thanked for and praised. Thanks to these policies under President Trump, we are seeing historically low illegal immigration numbers for the first time in decades. Ambassador Johnson, I hope you will work with the Mexican government to further combat illegal immigration, put a stop to drug trafficking from Mexico, and promote peace and stability in the Western Hemisphere by encouraging Mexico to do more to counter China, Russia, and other malign countries. The impending review of the USMCA will provide some opportunity to do this, and I hope you'll seize it. Thank you to all of our 3 witnesses for being here today. If confirmed, you'll have big jobs ahead of you. I look forward to working with you to improve these important bilateral relationships as we work to make America safer, stronger, and more prosperous. With that, Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to our nominees this morning, and welcome also to your families and supporters who are here today. One of the greatest assets, as the chairman also pointed out, that we have in the United States is our strong alliances around the world and our friendly neighbors close to home. This traditionally has meant a wealth of opportunities for Americans, and that's certainly true in my home state of New Hampshire. New Hampshire's biggest export market is Canada. Our 3rd biggest is Mexico, followed by Japan. As the New Hampshire businesswoman who accompanied me to President Trump's speech to Congress last week stated, and I quote, "We rely on smooth international trade for sourcing raw materials and packaging that are either not grown or commercially available in the United States." But self-inflicted trade wars don't just cut off opportunities for small businesses in my state. They raise the price of gas, of groceries for Americans all across the country. And at the same time, the alliances that we've built since the end of World War II with nations like Japan go far beyond our trade relationship. These alliances have been the cornerstone to America's security for generations. Japan hosts almost 55,000 active duty U.S. service members on 15 major bases, more than any other country in the world. We work together on cyber defense, on missile technology, and on AI. And Japan has been a staunch supporter of Ukraine. A recognition that defeating Putin in Ukraine is critical for the security of sovereign nations around the world, I think, is at the foundation of that support. As the former Japanese Prime Minister said in his address to Congress in the last couple of years, the Ukraine of today may be the East Asia of tomorrow. For our nominees today, if confirmed, you'll be leading efforts that are fundamental to our national interests. Combating corruption and fighting the flow of fentanyl through Mexico into the United States, strengthening our trade partnerships on behalf of American manufacturers and farmers, bolstering our allies like Japan, who live well within striking distance of North Korea and China. Ambassador Hoekstra, Ambassador Glass, Ambassador Johnson, if you are confirmed, you will be leading many of these efforts. So I would ask, how helpful is it to have President Trump bad-mouthing our alliance with Japan from the Oval Office? Should we make threats about Canadian sovereignty as it conducts its elections? Should we try to bully Mexico as we work together to fight drug cartels and curb immigration at our southern border? Unfortunately, the Trump administration's first month and a half in office does not inspire confidence and trust when it comes to our foreign policy, which is why we must make sure the United States has ambassadors who are suitable to represent our nation in the countries that they're assigned to. Ambassadors who can solidify and build on our long-standing alliances. So to our nominees, given some of your past statements, I hope you'll take this hearing as an opportunity to articulate your vision for positive engagement with Canada, Mexico, and Japan. How will you build on the successes that we've had over the years in those countries? How will you work with their governments to advance America's interest? I look forward to hearing your thoughts and plans. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Scott, I'm going to give you the floor and the opportunity to have some remarks in the introduction, please.
Okay. Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, and members of the committee. It is an absolute honor to sit before you today to introduce Ron Johnson to serve as the next U.S. Ambassador to Mexico. I'd also like to recognize his wife, Alina, and their 4 children, Robert, Lori, Michael, and Joshua. Ron and Alina are also the proud grandparents of 8 grandchildren. As a grandfather of 7 myself, it's probably the best job in the world. President Trump made a fantastic pick with Ron Johnson. He has served our country for over 40 years and loves our country. First as a military officer in Army Special Forces, retiring as a Special Forces Colonel, and later as an operations officer at CIA with service around the world, including multiple tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. finally serving as U.S. Ambassador to El Salvador from 2019 to 2021. Although his service to our nation has required him to frequently be away, Ron has been proud to call the great state of Florida his home for over 20 years. During Ron's service in El Salvador, he helped reduce illegal immigration to the U.S. by 80%. He worked with El Salvador's leadership to produce one of our best partnerships in the Western Hemisphere. As he was nearing the end of his appointment, El Salvador was consistently reporting the lowest number of violent crimes in history, and economic growth in the country has been improving. Now well poised to receive more foreign and domestic investment in its economic sectors. He also worked with Salvadorian and U.S. law enforcement authorities to increase counter-narcotic activities by 500% and to cooperate cross borders to investigate, track, arrest, prosecute, and extradite gang members operating in both countries. By the time Ron's service in El Salvador ended, the U.S.-El Salvador relationship was stronger than it had ever been. Ron's efforts were recognized in 2020 when the State Department awarded him the Sue M. Cobb Award for Exemplary Diplomatic Service. President Trump chose a leader who can deliver for Americans and for the great men and women of our diplomatic service who are stationed in Mexico. His extensive experience in special forces, CIA, and diplomacy make him an exceptional candidate to be the next ambassador to Mexico. With his and Secretary of State Marco Rubio's leadership, our diplomatic mission to Mexico will be successful. Over the past 4 years, Mexico has played a part in allowing terrorists, drugs, and illegal immigration across our border with the failed open border policies of the Biden administration. As we work to ensure Mexico does their part in curbing the border and fentanyl crisis, we need strong leadership like Ron at the helm. Ron is deeply committed to the men and women who serve. I am confident that his skills, character, expertise will make him an effective ambassador to Mexico. I look forward to hearing from him today on his vision for U.S.-Mexico relations, how he plans to combat illegal immigration and advance President Trump's agenda. Working with President Trump and Secretary Rubio, I'm confident he will help restore peace through strength and stand for America's best interests. You have my full support, and I urge my colleagues to advance your nomination quickly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Scott. We appreciate those glowing words. We're now going to hear from each of the three nominees, and then we'll follow it up with a series of questions by the senators. I'd ask you to keep your remarks to about 5 minutes. If you want to put more in the record, obviously you are more than welcome to do that. These three are incredibly important to us. Obviously, I've worked with the White House to prioritize our hearings on a basis that the countries that are incredibly important to us. These three countries are incredibly important to us. So we're anxious to hear what you have to say and how you can better the relationship. So with that, we're going to start with Mr. Hoekstra. You will be up first. You have opportunity to do about 5 minutes.
Great, thank you. I'd like to submit my entire statement for the record.
It will be concluded.
Great, thank you. Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, distinguished members of the committee, it's an honor to be in front of you. It's good to be back on the Hill. This is a special place, and walking into the Capitol and recognizing that for 18 years I had the opportunity to call that my office was a time that I will never forget. I'm deeply appreciative to President Trump for his nomination to be the next U.S. Ambassador to Canada. With your concurrence and approval, I look forward to beginning my work in Canada and once again serving the people of the United States of America. As all of you know, public service takes a tremendous amount of support from our families, our community, to make our service possible. I'd like to recognize my wife, Diane. This summer, she and I will celebrate 50 years of marriage for the faith, for the total support that she has provided to me, our kids, and our family as we spent that time in public service. It would not have been possible without her, and that, as you all know, there are highs in the life of politicians, and there are lows. And living in the public eye can be great, and it can be challenging. But for us, public service has been a tremendous honor and a privilege, and we're deeply appreciative to have had that opportunity. Also in public service, I want to thank a couple of other ambassadors. Shafali Dugal, whom some of you may know, she succeeded me in the Netherlands. We built a very, very supportive relationship. She invited me and the family to come back to the Netherlands for 4th of July celebrations. And the Dutch were amazed. You have a person who was a strong supporter of the Biden administration and a Trump ambassador, and they looked at us and said, "Pete, why are you here?" And it's like, well, because Shefali is a friend and she invited us. And they were amazed because too often as they read the headlines coming out of the United States, they find it hard to believe that Republicans and Democrats actually talk to each other. I'm deeply appreciative to David Cohen, President Biden's ambassador, the former ambassador to Canada. He and I had a congratulatory phone call, and he pledged, his support and help to make sure that if confirmed, my transition to Canada, he would be there to assist in whatever way possible. I think it's a great testament to the people that have been confirmed by this committee and the standards that have been set in terms of the kinds of relationships that help us be effective and send a message across the borders that Republicans and Democrats are united in promoting the interests of the United States of America. We have our differences, but we are committed to the success of the United States of America. I'm an immigrant. My parents immigrated when I was 3 years old. They had experience with the Americans. It was the Allies that liberated my parents in the Netherlands during World War II. Specifically, it was the Canadians that liberated the parts of the Netherlands where my parents lived. So they are deeply appreciative for the service of Canada and America in liberating the Netherlands. My dad said he came here because this was the land of opportunity. My mom came here and she said, "I thought we were coming here for an adventure." What they found out that it ended up being true for both of them. 36 years after coming to the United States of America, they were able to see their son get sworn into the U.S. House of Representatives, a tremendous honor. Hailing from Michigan, I do have a special appreciation for Canada as a neighbor. My home state is connected to Canada by 4 and soon to be 5 bridge crossings, a long maritime border across the Great Lakes, vital links that drive businesses, jobs, and livelihood in both states. If confirmed, I will work tirelessly to build on that record of cooperation and extend it, obviously, nationally. I think there's 36 states that see Canada as their #1 trading partner internationally. As a congressman, I have frequently interacted with Canadians on trade, military, intelligence, cultural issues. Obviously, they're part of NATO. They're also part of Five Eyes, so that relationship goes deep. As an ambassador, it'd be my honor to promote U.S. interest and protect U.S. citizens. I recognize the obligation of implementing the strategies and policies of the United States. I recognize my responsibility to the President of the United States, to the citizens of America, but I'm also a man of the House. I recognize my responsibility to the members of Congress. I want to develop a partnership, and I look forward to working with you on the issues and the strategies that we put in place in Canada and to address the issues. With your approval, I look forward to once again having the opportunity to serve this great country and the American people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments and welcome your wife. Those of us that have been married that long and been through this up and down can certainly relate to that. Vicki and I have been 56 years together. We've been through 36 elections, and I can tell you your comments about the ups and downs are very accurate. There's no question about that. Mr. Glass, you're up. Let's hear what you have to say about Japan.
Great. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to thank Senator Hagerty in advance, who'll be doing the introduction. So to begin, thank you, Senator Hagerty, for the kind introduction. It's an honor to follow in your footsteps and call on you for advice, support, and friendship. And thank you for your long history of service to this country and to the great state of Tennessee and to the United States-Japan relationship. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Shaheen, and distinguished members of the committee, I am humbled and honored to stand before you as President Donald Trump's nominee to be the ambassador to Japan. I'm grateful to President Trump and Secretary Rubio's strength on the global stage, and I pledge to follow their lead, always putting America first and unabashedly promoting the interest of the American people. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the love of my life for 40 years, so I'm not up with the rest of you. But Mary, who is sitting behind me, she flew in just last night to be here today. I'd like to acknowledge and thank my mother and stepfather, Mary and Jay, as well as Mary's parents, Joe and Lori Ferguson, for the values that they've instilled in us and that I will carry forward as ambassador if confirmed. I'm thankful for my 3 sons, Gordon, George, and Andrew, their wives, and 6 grandchildren who have sent their prayers today and best wishes from afar. And I want to recognize my father, who watches over me always, and on this day especially, from heaven. We stand at the dawn of a new golden era between U.S. and Japan relations. As we approach the 80th anniversaries of the Battle of Iwo Jima and the end of World War II, it's remarkable to reflect on the evolution of this great relationship. America and Japan are now the strongest of allies. Japan is the top foreign investor in the United States, supporting 1 million U.S. jobs, including 500,000 in manufacturing. Cultural and educational ties bind our two people through decades of bilateral exchanges, joint research, art, and film. The U.S.-Japan alliance, celebrating its 65th anniversary this year, is the cornerstone of peace and stability and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific and in that entire region and beyond. And our shared values facilitate cooperation in the G7, the Quad, and trilateral engagements with South Korea and the Philippines and more. There are certainly challenges, and it's one to manage your relationship with an adversary, but it's quite another to manage your relationship with a friend. If confirmed, I will have tough conversations on tariffs and reducing our trade deficit with Japan. I will make sure Japan continues to increase its support for the defense of the region, our alliance, and our troops, and to ensure that our relationship works for the American people. I will make sure that we are uncompromising in our efforts to protect American citizens abroad. As ambassador to Portugal, I fought for American interests every day and earned the respect of the Portuguese president and prime minister. I was knighted with the Order of Prince Henry the Navigator, the highest honor that an American can receive. And thanks to the fantastic work of my team at the U.S. Embassy in Lisbon, I was also honored to receive the State Department's Sue Cobb Award, granted annually to the most effective and impactful non-career ambassador. If confirmed, I will work just as hard, leading a group of deeply experienced and dedicated diplomats at Mission Japan on behalf of the American people. The opportunities are vast. Japan is committed to reduce the trade deficit with us and its reliance on Russia by purchasing U.S. liquefied natural gas. If confirmed, I will hold them to that promise. Japan is committed to extending the upward trajectory of its defense budget, building capabilities that advance both our national security goals and strengthen deterrence in the region. If confirmed, I will hold them to that promise. And Japan is committed to build supply chain resilience, particularly in critical metals, and deeper collaboration on cutting-edge technologies, from quantum computing to AI to semiconductor processing. If confirmed, I will hold them to that promise. I'm grateful for the chance to work with the people of Japan, who 80 years ago launched an economic miracle and a vast societal transformation that brought them to where they are today. Japan is the world's 4th largest economy, the top investor in 39 of our 50 states, and our most impactful partner and ally for promoting peace and stability. Japan is known around the world for both its ancient traditions and modern innovations, which will shine brightly at the World Expo in 2025 in Osaka. If confirmed, I will ensure the funding generously provided by Congress for the U.S. Pavilion is used to showcase all that makes our country great on the global stage. I would like to close by saying this nomination is not just business, it is deeply personal. My eldest son, Gordon, and his wife, Yao, have lived in Japan for 13 years. My granddaughter, who is now 6.5 years old, was sworn in as a U.S. citizen by Senator Haggerty when he was ambassador to Japan. She is a product of the Japanese system. She is taught to be kind, hardworking, and inquisitive. She embraces the best qualities of both our countries. If confirmed, I will work tirelessly to make the U.S.-Japan relationship even stronger than I found it, with the added blessing of being able to live close to my granddaughter. Distinguished senators, I thank you again for your time today. If confirmed, it would be the honor of my life to once again serve the greatest country in the world, the United States of America. Thank you.
Chairman Risch, Ranking Member. We'll start again. Chairman Risch, Ranking Member Shaheen, and distinguished members of this committee. I'm truly honored to appear before you today as the President's nominee to serve as the United States Ambassador to the United Mexican States. I'm very grateful to President Trump for the faith and confidence he's placed in me, and to Secretary Rubio for his support. I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had to meet with many of you, and for your consideration today as I sit before you in this time-honored process. I'm humbled at the opportunity to serve our nation in this capacity, and especially at such an important period in our relationship with Mexico. If confirmed, I look forward to a continuing dialogue with you on your priority issues. I'm supported in this endeavor by a strong and patriotic family. My wife, Alina, who is with us today, immigrated to this country with her parents over 60 years ago as a refugee from Cuba. My government service has required frequent separations and duty in high-risk areas, but together we've managed to raise 4 children, Robert, who is here today, Lori, Michael, and Joshua. Our parents have all passed away, but we're people of great faith, and we believe they look down upon us today with pride and compassion. In their lifetime, it was sometimes hard to get by, but they weren't satisfied with just getting by. They wanted to pass on a better life for their children, to build better communities, a better nation, and in the process, a better world. Our youngest son, Joshua, is a veteran of the Iraq War. Together, we represent the 3rd and 4th generation of our family who have served the nation in combat. My father was a small business owner, and my mother's father was a sharecropper in Alabama. My in-laws came here from Cuba with nothing, and they both worked well after what is today considered retirement age. They understood just how fragile freedom is, and they loved the USA. Our parents instill values like honesty, respect, accountability, and a strong work ethic in their children. If confirmed, those values of initiative, enterprise, and integrity will remain constant in my pursuit to promote U.S. interest in Mexico. Our relationship with Mexico is one of paramount importance and complexity. We share a nearly 2,000-mile border, and our deep economic integration, shared security and border challenges, and strong cultural ties reflect Mexico's role as an essential partner. If confirmed, I'll advance this administration's top national security priorities, including securing our border from the flows of illegal drugs and aliens, ensuring a fair playing field for U.S. businesses and workers. I'll work tirelessly to address the issues that directly impact U.S. citizens, from transboundary pollution in Southern California to securing water deliveries for communities in Texas. The first priority will be to ensure the rule of law at the border. If confirmed, I will foster cooperation with Mexican authorities to halt and deter further illegal alien flows, and to accept the deportation of their citizens who are currently in the United States illegally. Mexico's recent actions to secure the border demonstrate the power of our partnership, including its deployment of 10,000 National Guard troops to the border and acceptance of the deportation of illegal aliens. Neither country can solve the challenge of illegal immigration alone, and I'm convinced that we can find solutions that will benefit both our nations. Among my highest priorities would be the protection of the American people. Mission Mexico is one of the largest U.S. diplomatic missions in the world, with 3,300 employees, 9 consulates, and 9 consular agencies. And I fully understand and appreciate the value of those consular services to our fellow Americans and your constituents. If confirmed, I will take seriously the solemn obligation of protecting U.S. citizens who live in and visit Mexico. This includes working with Mexican authorities to dismantle drug cartels that sow violence and addressing the scourge of illegal drugs that inflict harm on our communities in both the United States and Mexico. Mexico has surpassed China as the United States' #1 trading partner, Last year, bilateral trade hit a record $840 billion. Over $1.5 billion exchanged every minute. If confirmed, I will work to ensure U.S. companies and workers are treated fairly as we look towards the USMCA review and clearing a path for shared prosperity while safeguarding U.S. economic security, including protection from predatory Chinese trade practices. There's a lot to celebrate about our relationship with Mexico that often gets lost amidst discussions of the challenges. More than 10% of all Americans, some 40 million people, are of Mexican heritage. Our cultures have grown increasingly intertwined, and our societies share a spirit of optimism and new thinking that allows us to connect and collaborate to meet shared challenges. In summary, our relationship with Mexico is unique in its direct impact on the security and prosperity of American people. And if confirmed, I pledge to be a good and faithful steward of that relationship. Thank you.
5-minute questions. And first of all, for the panel and for the audience, people are coming and going because number one, we got a vote going on, and number two, we got a number of committee meetings going on where they're actually doing markups and voting and what have you. So don't be distracted, but I can assure you, Senator Shaheen and I can run the ship by ourselves if we have to. So here we are. Anyway, we will do a 5-minute round, then we'll actually go back and do a second if there's interest in that. So, Mr. Glass, I want to start with you. Are you familiar with the? First of all, my state has a really good relationship with Japan, and they're a trading partner. They're an important trading partner. We love them. They love us. But we got one problem. Potatoes is somewhat important to Idaho, as you may or may not know. Are you familiar with the ongoing fight we've had with Japan over the years on the potato issue?
I've certainly read about it.
Sorry.
I've certainly read about it in the media, and we've had some discussions on that. Yes.
You're going to learn a lot more assuming you're confirmed, which I'm sure will happen. But that is something that's absolutely critical to us, and it's a kind of thing that causes countries to get riled up when there's really no reason for it other than pure unadulterated protectionism. Everybody talks about free trade, but then you wind up with rules and regs that dress up like health issues or something like that, and all they are is protectionism. So we'll talk some more about that in private. Any other thoughts you have on that?
I certainly do. In fact, thank you very much for the question, because I have quite a bit of experience working with the Department of Agriculture on non-tariff trade barriers. We were dealing with that in Portugal actually with soybeans. And it had to do with a very nuanced regulatory issue up at the EU. And as we looked into it, it ended up something that we could change, and we did. And we went from virtually having no agricultural trade in Portugal between the Portuguese and the United States to hundreds of millions of dollars of soybeans. And most of these just take some determination. It tends to, when you were dealing with great bureaucracies of other governments, especially with something like the EU, you have to have a bit of patience. But I'm very determined to take care of being a believer in free, fair, and reciprocal trade, which is effectively the agenda of the Trump administration. I will work hard on that, and I take that very seriously. My mom's family are ranchers and farmers in Pendleton, which is right near the great state of Idaho. I was born and raised, and we raised our kids in Oregon, so we're very familiar with working with agriculture to make that happen. So I will work directly with your office if confirmed, and we'll see what we can do on that.
Thank you much. Probably been to the Pendleton Roundup.
Many times.
Where the Idaho Cowboys compete with the Oregon Cowboys.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Mr. Johnson, give us some hope here. I think most Americans are not fully dialed in with the dire situation in Mexico with violence and drugs. Their elections last year, there were hundreds, I forgot the exact number, but it's in the hundreds of candidates who were assassinated simply because they were running for public office. This is a tragedy, and it's a code of conduct and a method of doing business that just isn't acceptable for civilized people. Mexico has such tremendous potential in front of it with the people they have, the culture they have, the resources they have, but they got problems with drugs and crime. Give us some hope here. What are your thoughts on this? What do we have to do to help them move forward? Because we can't do it. As always, it's going to be up to the society themselves to do it. Give us some hope here.
Thank you for that question, Senator. I couldn't agree with you more, but I have to say I feel extremely positive about the communication that has occurred between President Sheinbaum and President Trump and the actions that we've seen Mexico recently take. 2 weeks ago today, we had a senior Mexican delegation here in Washington, D.C., and they met with Secretary Rubio. I believe the Secretary of Defense was there, and the Attorney General was also there. And as a result of that meeting, we saw the extradition of 29 criminals that were engaged in some of the activities that are harming Americans. And I believe we've seen additional arrests made based on information that was obtained from them already, and I think we'll see more. The other thing that occurred back in Mexico is we've seen a tightening of security against the cartels that has been done by the Mexican authorities. I'm hearing rumors that some cartel members are reluctant to leave their compound now, and that's very good news. I think, and you touched on this, I think our economies are entwined in such a way that what is good to make America stronger, safer, and more prosperous also holds true for Mexico. And I'm encouraged by some of the comments that I've seen out of the Sheinbaum government recently, comments she's made herself on prioritizing the relationship with the United States over that of China. I think Latin America is beginning to wake up to the fact that China does not have their interest in mind, and that creates opportunities for us.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Appreciate those thoughts. They've got a long ways to go, and we want to help every way we can. Mr. Hoekstra, are you familiar with the negotiations that are going on over the Columbia River Treaty?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
I've been involved in that on a bipartisan basis, and that's an important issue. My time's up, so we'll talk about it either on the second round or we'll talk about it privately, but it's something that we need to get that redone. It's in the process. It's moving along at a snail's pace, but I think we can get there. With that, Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador, Congressman Hoekstra, the U.S.-Canada bilateral relationship is at a historic low point. Recent polling in Canada showed that 75% of Canadians have an unfavorable opinion of President Trump, and 27% view the U.S. as an enemy. 30%, only 30% still view the U.S. as an ally. I come from a state that borders Canada. I know when you were in Congress, you represented a district that bordered Canada. We have the highest percentage of Canadian Americans of any state in the country. I find it very troubling that we are seeing our national anthem booed at ice hockey games, and that the country where we've got the longest undefended border in the world, where we have had such a positive relationship over the years, is now viewing America in the way they are because of this president's statements. They find it particularly offensive that he's talking about Canada as the 51st state. And I don't blame him, I gotta be honest. So how do you, I appreciated your opening statement and your talking about the importance of Canada to the United States, but how do you see approaching turning around that negative relationship that has developed because of the president's statements, and how do you envision addressing tariff issues
It's a great question. Obviously, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about that myself, pending the confirmation by the Senate of having to go there and being kind of the tip of the spear on this. I experienced similar things when I went to the Netherlands. There was a lot of hostility or concern about some of the objectives of the first Trump administration, which were really about fairness, getting the Dutch to pay for NATO, all right? Working with the Dutch to confront Russia on Nord Stream, the pipeline. The Dutch are great with water. They have money, so they were helping build it and to finance it. And what we really spent a tremendous amount of time on is focusing on the strength of the relationship between our two countries. Your state, my state, we have thousands of people, thousands of businesses that rely on this relationship, and they just, they see what's going on at 30,000 feet, but they gotta go to work every day, and they need to make this work. We have cooperated with Canada on so many things. In Michigan, it's the Great Lakes. That's important to us. It's trade. It's business. My experience on the Intel Committee, it is about NATO and those types of things. Canada is part of Five Eyes. So we have a great history of working together, and we know how to make this work. We now have to make and take that and say, we know how to make this work. Now let's do it and apply our experience to the priorities that the president has outlined. Freer, fairer trade, so that we can actually grow the business relationship between Canada
But
and the U.S.
excuse me for interrupting, but
Yeah.
isn't it true that Canada has one of the lowest tariff regimes of any country in the world? And that with the exception of dairy, which the president has pointed out and which I know we're still working on, that actually the tariffs in Canada are not outlandishly restrictive, and we've gotten along very well. I have small businesses in New Hampshire. One in particular called me over the weekend. They make sugar-free candy. They have a retail store in one community and a factory in another. They do 85% of their business with Canada, and Canada has now canceled all of their orders. So they're not sure they're going to be able to continue to operate. And I hear that story time and time again from small businesses in New Hampshire. So how is this trade war helping our economy here, and what are the metrics that the president has that say that when Canada and the United States reach this agreement that we're going to stop the trade war? Because everybody's operating, or we thought we were operating, under an agreement that the president actually negotiated when he was in his first term and credited as being the best trade agreement ever negotiated in the United States.
Yeah, thanks for the follow-up. I think the president has outlined a series of priorities relating to Canada. Trade and freer, fairer trade with Canada is one. Also, a request to work with the United States on the issue of fentanyl, something that I know is a very important issue in New Hampshire. Across the country, we lose 55,000 people per year.
We do, absolutely, and we have less than 1% of the fentanyl that comes into this country comes from Canada. They actually, last year, interdicted more drugs from the United States than we interdicted from Canada.
Yeah.
And, I agree, we need to get rid of all fentanyl, and that's important. But let's be honest about what's happening here. I'm sorry I'm over time, and so I'll call on Senator Scott.
Right. Ambassador Johnson, given the current U.S.-Mexico relations, why do you want to serve in Mexico, and how do you intend to manage that relationship while representing America's best interest?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I think it's a time for opportunity. I think the relationship between Mexico and the United States is poised and ready to launch forward in a way that will guarantee more security for Mexican citizens and U.S. citizens, and also help improve the economies in both countries. I'm particularly interested in working on increasing the current trade relationship that we have, which is the number one trade relationship that we have with anyone right now. And I think looking at some of the opportunities inside Mexico. I was looking, for example, at the microprocessor design and assembly and testing and packaging. Right now, most of those are designed in the United States. They're tested and packaged and assembled in mostly in Asia, in China and Taiwan, but also in other Asian countries. And I think there's an opportunity before us to look at moving that assembly, testing, and packaging to places in Mexico that still provide labor that's perhaps less expensive than labor would be here in the United States, because it's very labor intensive. But I think Mexico recognizes the fact that that's an opportunity for them to economically move forward. And I'm encouraged that President Sheinbaum has also said she places a higher priority